Our second meeting of the night is the Urbana City Council meeting. Are we ready? Right. And we'll begin this meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. This is outlined in our council rules. It follows a holiday, which is flag day. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We'll call this meeting to order, and will the clerk please call the roll?
Ammons. Brown.
Here.
Hazen.
Here.
Jacobson.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Roberts.
Here.
Wu.
Here.
Mayor Marlin.
Here. Next up is approval of minutes from two previous meetings, June 5th, 2017, and a public hearing on June 5th, 2017 as well. Bill?
I move approval of the minutes
I'll
of
second
June
it.
5th on both.
Okay, moved by Bill, seconded by Jared.
Dean.
Oh, Dean? Thank you.
I answered anything. It's okay.
Bill, any
I
discussion?
just wanted to say that I thought the detail on the minutes was just right. I know we've kind of gone back and forth between too much detail and not enough detail, and I thought Wendy did a really good job on these minutes and clarified a lot of things.
My staff thanks you.
One more.
Dennis?
Taking Bill Brown's hat, I found two typos,
And they are?
which could be corrected. Page 3 of 6, there's a list of 6 items at the top of the page. The 6th item reads, structural deficit should be addressed as new decisions are made. I think there's probably a past tense on the verb or the word addressed.
Okay.
So there's address with an ED ending on it. And on the next page, mid-page, this is under the reports of the officers. It reads, Mayor Marlin explained to all viewers that according to Urbana Superintendent Don Owen,
Yes.
a resolution addressing student homelessness was send to Urbana. It should be sent. And I can't believe I did that, but I found him and I had to say that let's correct him and get it right. Oh, there's one more thing also. The public hearing of Monday, June the 5th, I thought it would be wise to put the topic of the public hearing on the page so that we know to what public hearing we're referring to.
Excellent point. Thank you. Any further corrections to the minutes? All those in favor of approval of the minutes, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, those minutes are approved. Are there any additions to the agenda? Good, none. Next up are petitions and communications. First on the program will be a presentation by the Champaign County Economic Development Corporation, Craig Rust. And this is in response to some questions that arose during the meeting last week, so I asked Craig to provide an overview of the EDC, particularly since we have 3 new council members since this was last done.
Thank you. Bear with me a second here. Thank you. Thank you for asking me to come. I will very quickly kind of summarize what we do at the EDC and in response to some of the questions that I had heard that came up the other night, and then I'd certainly be willing to answer questions or engage in a dialogue about that. It hasn't been very long since we've been here, so I will not spend a lot of time on the structure and some of the detail, just a brief overview. First, I'd like to say that we're in an economic development environment that we didn't even know we would be in 5 years ago. I think we're dealing with some really significant realities right now. And a lot of those come from the economic condition of the state of Illinois, as you all know. I believe that downstate Illinois is not faring well compared to the upper quartile of the state, and there's a great deal of concern around that, and I think it's changed the approach. 5 years ago, we were doing a lot more retention. We were worried about making sure we were working with third-party search firms and doing quite a bit of attraction work. Now I think we're in a different environment, and so I put a few realities up on the wall there just to think about that I think are new for us. And probably the most important of those is regionalism. Has become extremely important. And I guess I probably should have started by making sure that you all knew what the EDC does. We're a not-for-profit. The mayor is on our board, along with 35 other private and public board members, and we essentially grow the economy of Champaign County. That's our charge, if you want to put it in the simplest terms. And we've been doing that for a long time. Our funding is approximately 2/3 public and 1/3 private sector. Most of our private sector funding are the larger corporations, BC Bank, Carl, the utility companies for the most part. And the cities and the university make up the bulk of our funding. So back to the realities for a minute. Regionalism, we have to think regionally. We are regional markets. The county has 200 and some thousand people in it. Our retail markets are well over that size. Our employment regions are much larger than that. You have people working in a 5 or 6 or 8 county area as far as where their job is located. We have people traveling back and forth between the cities. It's really important not to lose the focus on regionalism, because if we're not a powerful region, we'll all get lost in the state's economy. And I think that's the only way we can keep big employers and keep the economic growth moving forward. Also, workforce development has evolved as one of the most important critical factors right now in economic development, and I think it's crucial to being able to retain the companies that we have here and the ones in our region, because many of your residents work in the region at the larger employers, and really focus on workforce development. If we don't, we won't be competitive, and we'll lose some of the employers we have, and we won't be able to attract new employers. They are really looking hard for good employees, and I think that's a goal that we have to stay focused on. And then the third point is marketing Champaign County, marketing this whole region, and bringing people in for jobs, to buy housing, to spend their money here in our area. We have to be aggressive about it, because I think otherwise others do a better job of attracting. And right now, Champaign and Urbana have the upper hand, I think, on that, and we have to make sure we continue to have that upper hand. I'll give you a couple of examples of regionalism. The I Fly CU campaign is one we've worked on for years. As you know, the other day, United announced 3 new flights. We now have United and American. We have the strongest regional airport in downstate Illinois, and we expect to continue to grow that and remain dominant as a regional airport. It's crucial to us that we remain the dominant airport for the university and for our businesses. And having those 2 airlines flying more than 6 flights to Chicago and 1 to Dallas-Fort Worth is a crucial part of our continuing regionalism. Also, we just got back from D.C. recently. We went and talked to all of our legislators about what's going on in this area. And again, it's a very regional conversation about making sure that Central Illinois is a part of the consideration of our legislators. The constant attraction and retention process that we go through, we meet with and spend a lot of time with our employers to make sure they're able to find employees and they're satisfied in this employment market. And then we also celebrate our successes. We've really succeeded lately in deepening the size of the tech pool, the employment pool, and we have to keep doing that. So we're a logical alternative to the coasts. We're half the price. We've got, we think, equal talent. We have to continue to grow those companies here in our communities, and so far we've been very successful in being able to do that. I'll focus on small business development for a minute. The Illinois Small Business Development Center is a part of our office. We receive about $200,000 a year in state and federal funding to run that office. So we leverage a great deal of money that comes from other sources in order to develop small business in Champaign County. And as you can see here, the text repeats that we do the small business counseling or advising for all of your grant projects that you do with part of the Urbana Business Development Grant Program. And we had some numbers up on the wall there, the 7 recommendations so far in 2017 of about $13,000. And then the figures for 15 and 16 were significant. You have expert advice for all of the businesses that want to start a new business in Urbana or grow a business on Main Street as a result of that. Also, I put a few figures up here on the wall on the total number of clients advised. We have 105 so far this year. We had 212 new clients last year. So far this year, 51 of our clients are females. 61 are minority clients that come in for business and international trade advice, and we've conducted 19 workshops. We're on pace to exceed last year's figures in small business development. 249 new clients in Urbana, 30 councils so far in 2017, and the minority representation is 33%, which is better than the population demographic number, and also with the number of female clients, it's 24%. So we work hard on making sure that we're well represented there, and that our office is open to everyone that walks in that needs help starting a new business. We've created the Bridge program, which gives them access to a lot of information when they walk through the door, and gives them access to a lot of providers of business information community-wide. So all of the other providers are a part of Bridge, and it's all in one place. For example, it links directly back to Urbana's web page, and so there's a direct link back to Urbana. There's a direct link back to the service providers, and it gives the person that walks in really good access to business assistance. And the third piece of my kind of trends and realities is that one of marketing ourselves. And we are very aggressive about that. We created the You're Welcome CU program for that purpose. We're getting a lot of attention nationwide. We have to market ourselves as a destination. We're not a city in Illinois. We're Champaign County. You don't hear people talk about Austin, Texas. They talk about Austin. And we have to continue to market ourselves as a place where people want to go and succeed and open businesses and live. And they can do it for half the price of Silicon Valley and have a really good lifestyle here. And that's the message that we continually try to push. We got the message up on the water tower, which was a significant accomplishment. The water company worked with us on that. We have it in the bus stations and other places. We just continually drive home the message that you're in a unique place here. No other place like it exists in Central Illinois. And the other way we do that is we push the local brand. So we spend a lot of time on branding, and make sure that people shop local, think local, understand that many of the companies in this county make the goods that they have the option to buy instead of buying them elsewhere, and that has been pretty effective so far. And with that, I'll open up to questions, because I'd rather you ask me or we discuss it than just talk at you.
Bill?
So we're going to have...
Thank you, Craig.
We're going to have a vacancy in Lincoln Square Mall come December, I guess, with Health Alliance leaving. Would you work to or have you started working with Jim Webster to try to recruit a company of the appropriate size to fill that space?
Yes, the way I'd approach that is I'd first work with the mayor and staff to make sure that I'm pointing Jim Webster or a project in the right direction, because that's crucial, I think, that each of the communities is in charge of their own destiny, has some input on what they'd like to see happen there and that sort of thing. But that was exactly how we would approach that. Do we need to put up together some kind of RFP approach? Is the owner willing to shop the project out and find users? How do they want to approach it? I've worked with Urbana staff on a number of projects where they come to me and ask, how would we approach this, or where do we go for real estate help? So yes, that would be a good example, as would any of your empty buildings on Main Street. If a developer has a goal of developing that, then we could engage in a dialogue about where would you find those resources, where would you go to make sure to fill that vacancy.
Eric?
So I'm a little punchy because I haven't been to bed since yesterday morning. But where I was for the last several days was in San Jose, Costa Rica. And one of the things that I was doing was visiting around a number of the universities in San Jose area and hearing about how university developed technology was seeding local technology industry. And I'll just tell you one thing that I saw that epitomized this. It just blew me away. At Leeds University, we went into a makerspace facility. And the people who are working in there at that time were a group of women business people, women who had businesses. And what they were doing there was they were developing the ability to add the capabilities of three-dimensional printing to their businesses, which is just enormous. Mm-hmm. Because there's so much that can be done with that. So one of the things that I have come back with, and I immediately accosted Dennis in the parking lot when he and I arrived, is that we've really got to, the tech people at our university really are focused on national and international enterprise. And very little of that is in developing our local economy. In San Jose, and they have a series of universities in San Jose metropolitan area with a total of 70,000 students. It's a educational hub for the entire Latin America, and but very, very big focus, and a lot of that is done in partnership. I mean, they're developing local technology industries in partnership with American corporations, in partnership with Amazon and HP and Intel, who have set up operations there in San Jose. So maybe I'm naive, but I think, wow, there's something there that I think, could learn from about that process.
Well, a couple of things on that. You're right, there are many. And I think some of that we have going here. Obviously, there may be some scale differences. But a couple of the things that we do, we work very closely with the Research Park and the University of Illinois, and a number of our new companies that have decided to stay here instead of moving to Silicon Valley, which is where they frequently end up, have been because of the talent that's here and because they could also see an environment that they could attract and retain employees in our area. So we have that advantage, I think, and like I said, there's a scale difference. We don't always compete head-to-head well with California or Costa Rica or other places. But at our scale, we are succeeding in that, and we have a lot of companies like Agribul, where the intelligence came out of the university, and the company has now grown to over 60 people working employed by this tech company that was essentially using science that was invented here, is becoming nationally known and even known around the world. If we can continue that pattern, I think we will get some of what you're talking about, which is that relationship. The other piece of it is we have a lot of large international and national firms that have facilities in the research park around big data, and the fact that we have Caterpillar and State Farm and Deere and Capital One, and the list goes on, of these companies here tapping into our student intelligence. What they're also finding is they get a lot of employees out of that. And some of them have either grown here, like Yahoo, or stayed in the area. And I think if we keep doing that in partnership with the university, we'll pick up on some of what you're talking about, those relationships. With the really big corporations, the best way we can do it is the research coming out of the university, because that's something they need badly. A State Farm or a Deere, our numbers don't mean anything to them until they start looking at big data, and then having 20 or 30 students each year that can work in their labs on big data becomes something they can't get anywhere else in the United States. And when we have a situation like that, I think we have to capitalize on it.
Any other questions? Mary Alice?
So one of the things that you mentioned was workforce, and making sure that we had that the employers had the number of people trained to do the job. So my curiosity is, what happens if somebody says, hey, we can't find anybody in big data, for example? What do you do with that information?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And big data, the big data one isn't a problem because there's all these smart students coming out of the university all sitting down at computers and doing big data. Where we have the biggest problem are in our industries, and some of that is tech work. So they're running robots and they're working in industry, and some of it is more closely aligned to manual labor, but it requires some math and other science skills. They're not able to find those employees. And what happens then is people get in an argument about who to blame for that. Is it the schools? Is it the families? Is it the people's not, they aren't motivated, and they go on and on and on. The real solution to that is to make sure that we've got the schools working with the companies so that the students can apprentice in or go through and participate in what's going on in the companies, and then vice versa, they're coming in and teaching or running the vocational programs in the schools. We've seen that working fairly well in Danville, and we'd like to pick up and grow some of that possibility. And EDC's done a couple of experiments with companies now where we have a small number of students working in the company. Frasca is one of those. They actually had a high school senior and I believe a Parkland freshman working at Frasca, and they essentially had jobs when they were finished with their apprenticeship, and they learned and fell in love with the kind of work that they're doing there. When we see that happen, then we have to try to scale that up so that the bigger manufacturers can have a way to grow the employment base here. They're not going to get it out of the schools. The schools aren't going to turn out people ready for those jobs. It's going to have to be a partnership to work with them to get there. So that your companies like Flexengate and Dart and others, as they become more mechanized and more specialized, they can get the people they need to work in their plants. Because if they can't, ultimately they'll reduce the size of the workforce or even leave.
So is your role then to take this information and go back to the school districts, go back to Parkland and say, hey,
Yes.
we need some people here. Do you have any programs or any students that you can identify? Is it linking those items?
Yes, linking, exactly. We would take the small programs we've had. HL Machine and Frasca have done this on an experimental basis at a small scale. We try to scale those up. We'd keep linking. We'd find companies willing to take in 6 or 8 students and try to grow the program. So it's a linking and a growing. When you look at the big employers, they'll be retiring out hundreds of baby boomers over the next decade. They have a real employment void to fill of highly skilled employees, and they're not going to get them fresh out of school. It's going to be more of an apprentice model, more similar to what Germany and other countries have done, where they try to work people into the jobs and the jobs into the schools so they're teaching the right subjects.
So is the plan, you had mentioned Danville School, is the plan to then broaden that to Urbana or Champaign? Are there anything?
Well, we wouldn't broaden their program, but we would copy it a little bit.
Start,
Yes.
yeah.
We've talked with, actually, we've talked with Nick Elder, the regional education operation here, about trying to do that and trying to duplicate those efforts. So yes, we would do something similar to that. and grow it. It just grows slowly. You just have to keep, the success of one or two of those leads to more of them, I think.
I have one more question, is that okay? My other question was, trying to increase the number of people shopping local, buying local. What is that a marketing? If you could expand on that and how you do that, that would be great.
Yeah, that's a challenging one because, of course, with the with the Walmarts and the other retailers out there, Amazon pressure will continue to be a problem for municipalities with sales tax and retail. I think the thing we can do the most is to try to recruit and retain and encourage creative and interesting retail and service opportunities, and we have a lot of them. If you think about your Main Street and Champaign's Main Street, they're filled up with unique businesses that are providing something that you can't get at Amazon or one of the big retailers, and that has to be the focus. I go to a lot of communities and they don't have that. They don't have that specialty. They don't have that character. They don't have that, they're just not a special place. And I think if your community can maintain its role in providing that special place, you'll encourage more people to consume locally. They'll still shop on Amazon, of course, but when they have a choice, then I think they tend to, and the local coffee shops is my favorite example. There's enough good local coffee shops in our region that they've stayed strong and fairly dominant in the coffee shop market. You go into some communities and that isn't the case at all. The big names have taken over.
So just to clarify, in terms of local, you're talking about just making sure that we have a diverse set of businesses. That's kind of the game plan. Because I mean, I know that some communities really try and push, buy local. If you buy local, then X number of dollars stay local. There's that kind of plan to increase that. But so, in terms of your organization, what you guys do is try and increase the diversity of services and products that are delivered here. Is that
yes,
correct?
I haven't seen the incentive idea work real well in retail. People tend to shop where they shop and buy what they need to buy. But I think if we have a small business development center going like we do, and we're encouraging new business startups or the growth of existing small businesses into more interesting or better small businesses, that's probably one of the things we can do to create that variety. I mean, the food variety in Urbana and Champaign County, for that matter, is phenomenal for the size of our population. And we have to keep that going, keep that creativity going by encouraging people to start businesses.
I would say the Shop Local, Buy Local is a project that EDC would work with UBA to promote. That's a logical
Right.
area of cooperation.
Yes.
And just to your question about linking the various entities in the workforce development, the EDC board, Champaign-Urbana school superintendents sit on the EDC board, the president of Parkland College, there's a University of Illinois representative. So a lot of the people who would be directly involved in the workforce development effort are already on the board. So it's very easy for them to get the same information and go from there. So.
And a part of your
Yeah.
question, and the mayor reminded me of that, was how do you encourage that behavior? And I think one of those things is to make the tie back. The fact that when you shop local, you not only support sales tax in your community, but you're putting money in the pocket of someone who also spends money in the community, and it tends to multiply. And when you start to explain that benefit, people say, "Oh, I'm supporting my community."
Dennis.
I was wondering about the really small startup businesses that we've seen pretty well encouraged and successfully take root in the Urbana area. So we will have like a studio full of maybe like 6 or 7 small businesses sharing a space and trying to grow. What is your yardstick for those kinds of businesses to actually be successful? If those businesses remain like a one person or a partnership for like 7 years or 10 years, is the success the fact that they still exist, or would we want to see these in tiny little entrepreneur moments grow more significantly if we're going to consider these as successful business experiences?
That's an important question. I don't think it always depends on size. It's really what our business advisor would say if he were sitting here was there's a period of time where they have the opportunity to get the numbers to work, and they usually survive or they don't. And it's based almost purely on economics. You know, the inflow and outflow of money, it has to be in balance. Otherwise, you can't borrow enough to stay in business. And that tends to sort out who is successful and who isn't. I think the growing question is a slightly different one. You could stay a small two-person business, and if your numbers are working, if your sales exceed your expenses, you will be successful. From a community point of view, our goal would be to grow that into a 6 or 8 employee business, because then you're, again, multiplying the benefit of that payroll by many times. It's being spent in the community many times over. So the goal from the community point of view would be, yes, to grow that. And usually that's a sign that things are working, because they don't tend to grow if they don't get the bottom line to work out. And there's a kind of a magical 3-year period there where it's either going to fly or it isn't. And they spend a lot of time with our small business advisor making sure that they don't make the kinds of mistakes where the numbers get badly out of balance and they fail. And we've had some real successes in getting a lot more of those to succeed past the 3-year point.
Would you say that just the fact that there are, I guess, pockets or nests of these kinds of creative entrepreneurs working it out and trying to make that success, whether they're going to make that success in 5 years or they're going to go somewhere else in 2 years, just the fact that they exist here in town, and maybe if there were even more of them, that would be a sign of vitality for our community?
I would think so.
Is that a sign of that we're just not getting it together?
Well, I think in communities like ours, people value that small business environment. They go to places they like that aren't necessarily big businesses, and they do interact with each other. If you think about Main Street and Urbana, in fact, both downtowns have real cultures of supportive small businesses trying to work together to make the place more appealing and work. So I think that has a tendency to reinforce itself, where if the big giants get a toehold on a street, you know, they tend to, more competition sets in, and pretty soon you have fast food on every corner, and you've developed into some different kind of environment. And I think our communities value that smaller business, focus.
Dean?
The grants that you were referring to for the small businesses, were those federal grants?
It's a combination. The federal SBA puts money to the state of Illinois under a contract they have for a 100% match. So 50% of our money comes from SBA federal, and then 50% is state of Illinois. It comes from DCEO as a grant for the federal. I'm not sure if the federal money didn't exist whether we would have the state money, but fortunately the state matches the federal grant. And then we have we have to apply for an annual budget amount each year, and then we get a contract approved for that year.
Any of that grant money coming directly from your agency or from anything more local than state?
We have a match too. They call it 100% match, and then they've got this interesting formula where they give us some credit back in that match, and we put a lot of our HR time. So 20% of my time and 30% of my assistant's time goes back to the grant activities to support that, and they count that as part of the match. Our rent for their half of the building goes back and counts as the match. So the amount of cash that I actually have to apply against that grant is fairly small. And just recently, Decatur came in and wanted to do, instead of growing their own SBDC, they wanted to provide some of the cash match and take a regional approach to development with Decatur. So we're experimenting with that this year.
Thank you.
Aaron?
All right, so Craig, sorry. Thanks for coming to share and give us a much clearer understanding of what you all do at EDC. I did spend a little bit of time talking to some ex-board members over the past couple of days, and I just appreciate being educated about some of the inner workings or behind-the-scenes type of things that the average person doesn't understand. So, but I do have several questions. Maybe you should have brought some water. That seat gets a little hot sometimes around here. But Go for it. You've been answering a lot of questions. I don't know why Charlie didn't at least get you a bottle of water, man.
No, I brought my own.
All right, so one of the things I heard you say earlier was that the 2/3 of your funding is public and about another third is private funding. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, but when we spoke earlier, there was I asked for some particular information as it relates to diversity, your data of your workforce, your staff, as well as the salaries of the employees. And so with 2/3 of the money being public, I would think that it would be fair to ask that the salaries and things like that be public information. Is there a particular reason why it's not?
No, we don't hide that information. My salary can be looked up on GuideStar by anybody that can get into GuideStar. So I'm not shy about saying what that number is. My salary is $90,000 a year. So if you ask me that question, it's easy to answer. I don't usually talk about the salaries of my employees in a public environment. The two that work for the Small Business Development Center are state funded, and that's all public information. Their salaries are each in the 60s, and that's all state and federal money. Like I said before, I have two additional employees that work on the non-small business development side of the house, and their salaries combined are about $90,000. So that's the salary picture. Essentially, in our office, we put our budget in terms of HR and personnel costs as opposed to publishing all the individual salaries. But we have no reason to hide that information. The ratio of public and private is kind of an interesting question, but if you think about it, half of our entire budget is public in that it's grant dollars. So it's taxpayer dollars coming from federal and state sources. And when I said 2/3, 1/3, that's the other side of the economic development house. And so proportionally, we have even more public money in than the 2/3, 1/3 because of that state and federal taxpayer amount.
So what is the budget for the EDC?
It's the gross number is just under 700,000, and 200 of that is a grant. Some of that are assets that we have, and then the rest of it is economic development. So it's about 50-50 between SBDC and the other EDC activities that they range in the 300 and some thousand. I didn't bring a copy of it with me, but those are rough numbers. I could get that information to the mayor and she could share it with the council. We're very open about how we spend that money.
Well,
and we're
I'm
careful
certainly
about how we spend it.
Well, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, in these days.
I'm certainly intrigued by the workforce development things and the Small Business Development Center, and I've heard good things, really good things about both of those, which actually I look for opportunities for more understanding around how to streamline. I've talked to UBA, and so you're not the only person or group that I grill about some of these things. I think you're getting a little more than what most of them get. I'm just practicing for them, though. So, so one of the things that you talked about is regional, and the EDC's responsibility is to bring the larger employees and stuff like that. Who was the last big employer that, employing, 50 people, 100 people that EDC was specifically associated with bringing to Champaign County?
Vista Outdoor, which was BRG, which started out being Bell, which it's changed several times, was probably the one we had the most direct impact. That was the largest one in recent years, and that was back in the old days when the search firms came to us with projects. That was one where we engaged with DCO and the company and made the pitch, made the strong argument, and frankly, that one located here because of the workforce in Rantoul. They love the Midwest work values. They like the workforce. They kept it here for that reason. We've had some other some stay. We've had more significant retention than actual new expansions. If you look at the state news right now, there aren't very many statewide employers that are increasing manufacturing, that has really leveled off. And I think a lot of them are waiting to see what happens with the state economy before they make large investments. All of our DCEO incentives have essentially disappeared. Once the EDGE tax credit expired, then we had no tools to compete with Indiana or Michigan for those plants. So it's become a very difficult environment in which to attract new employers, industrial employers. But it is a great environment to keep the ones that we do have. When the Werco plant burned down on Mattis Avenue in Champaign, their tendency, their initial intent was to move that to Indiana where they already owned property and had a bigger plant. And we worked really hard with them to make sure that those 80 or 90 jobs stayed here in Champaign County and they realized they couldn't retool those jobs and move them to Indiana easily, and convince them to rebuild the plant instead of moving it. So those are more common than the new plant expansions right now, and that's true.
And
of
when
any
did Bell come here? When did Bell come here?
Who?
Bell. You said the corporation. You said Bell, right? That was the employer.
Bell came in to the building that's now Vista Outdoor, and has changed names 3 times since. Through acquisitions, they still make the similar products, bike helmets and
Right.
Recreational products. So it's called Vista Outdoor now.
Okay, so.
But they've kept the number of employees about the same. Another big one that came in was Rantoul Foods. Ironically, some of them have been up in Rantoul. Champaign-Urbana hasn't had a large plant expansion in a while.
Yeah. So what year was that Vista came in? It's now called Vista.
On the Bell
Yes.
Vista, that was probably 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
And
All right.
we've tried to keep them here and employing. That's the other challenge, is once you get one of those opened up, is to make sure that they're satisfied with the workforce, and that, so we work hard to make sure that they stay.
Well, I definitely understand. The representative talks to me all the time about people see what bills you pass, but they don't see the ones you've blocked, right?
Right.
So I appreciate understanding. I have an understanding for, just keeping businesses here as well is critically important to us as much as bringing new businesses. One of the other things that I wanted to ask about is considering that I'm the one who particularly raised a lot of the concerns around the increase in what you all would be getting from the city. Why didn't you all come to us and ask for an increase in what we have allotted over the years, as many other agencies did?
Well, here's the irony, is about, 5 years ago, I was sitting here in front of you and asking that the amount of the Urbana contribution be increased to $38,000. There's a rough formula that's been used with all of the communities based on their population, and it's not exact in every case, but it's fairly close to a per capita amount. And Urbana's was trailing behind because you'd had some growth, and that number hadn't gone up for a number of years. So it was increased to $38,000. 2 years ago, I believe, it was cut to half of that amount. And we had to have a conversation about what to do about that. And the important thing was that we keep performing well for Urbana in the hopes that we get it back up to the 38. Champaign, for example, puts in about 115. The University of Illinois puts in about 75. You're our third largest single contributor even at the 19 level. But we would like to get it to the 38. We're not really asking for an increase. We're asking to get it to what we'd call a parity level with the other communities. One of the reasons I believe we're primarily publicly funded is because the public entities, the communities, recognize economic development and growth as a public good, and businesses don't necessarily look at it that way. They look at, are you creating employees for me? Are you paving the roads? Are my taxes fair? They look at the whole business climate. You all look at it as a public good, just like you do your other public services, and you realize if you grow the economy, then everything else rises with that tide. And so I think University of Illinois and the cities essentially have recognized the importance of participating in that almost as a public good as opposed to a private contribution.
Well, I appreciate seeing, you said that Champaign is at how much again? You said 119?
It's 115, I believe.
115,
Yeah.
and the university gives how much?
75,000. And Champaign added a little bit to theirs when we did they've got and I didn't point this out, but I'll raise it. They had they worked with us to put together an incentive package around small business development where they provide some, similar to the way you do on Main Street, they provided some additional incentive money to an individual that was growing their business so they could provide legal, accounting, and other services. So they created a program like that and put some funding towards that. We'd like to do the same thing in Urbana. It's been very successful in Champaign. They've essentially run out of money. They went all the way up to the maximum so far, and it's been extremely successful. So we'd like to do the same thing.
So
in
I
Urbana.
definitely appreciate your answer. Respectfully, you didn't answer my question, though. My question was, why didn't you all come to the city to ask for an increase to what you're currently getting this year? Because it's my understanding that you did not do that. It was the mayor's idea to give EDC almost another $10,000 on top of what we currently give you guys. Was there a proposal that you all put in that I'm not aware of for?
Well, we've asked the mayor and the previous mayor and the current mayor each year to increase the funding to the level that the 38,000 goal that I've kind of held in my mind as the where I'd like to see Urbana. So yes, we've asked that funding be increased, but we've also understood that there are serious budget considerations, and we have a dialogue about that, and then we ask and we get what ends up in the budget. So
And the process is that the mayor's office, the mayor, the city staff and mayor prepare the budget. So it's not a question of individual organizations coming and asking for funds, so.
there's been no lack of ask on our part, but we also
The ask has
understand.
been there, but the response has been different until this year.
So it's
If
my
I could-
understanding that,
If I could clarify the process as well, that the council will vote on the budget. Once that budget is approved, staff would seek to bring forward an agreement with EDC, at which time there would be a detailed proposal submitted, and council would have further information to review in the context of an agreement, as we've done with UBA and Visit Champaign County as well. So the budget authorization is only the first step, and it's sort of give staff the guide work to go forward with the detailed proposal at that time.
And this, and this agreement that's the first time we will have an agreement with the EDC. So it'll lay out, and the council will have input as far as what's in it as well.
so the other agencies that have come before us, like the UBA, who came and did a presentation for us and was speaking specifically to the budget requests that they were making, what's the difference exactly in what you just described as opposed to what Mr. Ross is describing?
I mean, there's no difference in the action council will take, which will to be approve a budget. However, there are often things in the budget that require further action from council in order to allow staff to actually spend that money. And so in the context of UBA will also be coming back for an actual agreement for both the Sweet Corn Festival and the operational funds, EDC and Visit Champaign County. I think council had communicated that it had questions about EDC's budget. We were also coming to the end of a 3-year agreement, so there was a need to do some more proactive communication in that regard, and there was a need for Craig to come, and thank you for coming tonight, Craig, on short notice.
So just a couple more questions for you, Craig. As it relates to, I asked you about the staff. You said you have about 5 people
Yes.
on staff. And so what are your ethnic and racial demographics of those 5 people?
2 white females, 2 white males, and 1 African-American male.
And the people who are the directors and associate directors or executive directors, are any of them people of color?
No.
So as it relates to ESG, what approach does the EDC take towards ESG? Are you familiar what ESG is?
No, explain to me.
It's a sort of shortened form. We like acronyms and stuff around here. It stands for Environmental, Social, and Governance. And the reason why I asked that question is because when you search for particular employers or you look for larger employers, I'm wondering what sort of focus does the ESG have on the governance structure of that particular organization? Are you concerned if whether or not they have diversity, or if they bring women in, or people with disabilities? Are you concerned about their environmental impact, their footprint? Are you concerned with those types of things at all? Are they union shops or are they not? Are you concerned with those things at all?
We are concerned our effect on the private sector as far as those decisions that they make is sometimes limited. I think you as a municipality, state government, county government have a larger effect than we can. We work with them to make sure that the fit is good in the community, and to that extent, when you have goals as far as the diversity and makeup of the workforce, it helps us make that recommendation. We don't have that necessarily. I guess the way I'd explain that is our goal is to make sure to get the workforce that they need. Personally, I believe it should be as diverse a workforce as possible, but that's not usually the question the company has of us. The question really is, can we get enough employees, or where do we get our employees? And then I think it's incumbent on all of us through the process of education and workforce development to make sure that we have good, diverse employee base so that we can say, yes, we have very good employment base and it's a very diverse one. So I think it comes back to us that way.
Well, I mean, to me, that's why I ask these types of questions to all the agencies that are coming forth, because you can't, you won't be as successful in attracting or signaling to those that you are searching for, that you are recruiting, that diversity is important, if you don't reflect that diversity. So it concerns me that if the EDC has 5 different positions, but the lowest paid position or the least impactful position is the position held by someone of color, that's a concern for me. So, but I appreciate you taking the time to come and answer my questions and my colleagues' questions as well. The last one I had was in relationship to the summer youth employment program. Do you all, are you all involved with that at all with Champaign?
Well, we support the Champagnes, and we'd like to support Urbana doing the similar program. I think it's been extremely successful. I was at Champaign when that was conceived, and it was early on. They had some struggles organizationally, but I believe it really works to get the students in the workforce. It's not unlike what I was describing with the ultimate goal in workforce development of getting employees in the schools and getting the schools in the places of employment. So I think it begins that process. It's interesting to me, sometimes students that come out of that are really understand the importance and jump right in when they have an opportunity to go work in another environment. It's exposure. It's seeing what it's like on the inside of that company. So we'd be very supportive if we could find ways to actually support those programs. I think we'd be all about trying to do that, if the cities would continue to do them. And it enlightens the schools. They have a hard job in front of them to take the limited tax dollars and educate the students, but summer youth is an example of something that's outside of the educational process that really makes a difference when you get to workforce. So we would be very supportive of that.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other quick questions? I would add the Summer Youth Employment Program is administered by the Champaign and Urbana school districts, and the Regional Planning Commission has served as the fiscal agent, so they're the ones directly involved in the Summer Youth Program. Okay, thank you very much, Craig.
Certainly, and if you want more information from us, just ask us and we'll provide any kind of written information.
Okay, thank you very much. We have several other members of the public who wish to speak. Paris Balderota from the Urbana Business Association.
Hi. I just here to have a quick statement to show my support of the EDC and Craig and the work that his staff are doing. So I believe that it's important that the community recognize that the City of Urbana, UBA, and the EDC work together to better our community. Each of the organizations has value that we bring to our communities, and we happily work together to improve our economy and the quality of life in our communities. I look forward to working with the City of Urbana and the EDC in this coming year, and are excited to see the positive changes that we can make together. Thank you.
Thank you, Paris.
Oh.
Dean?
Thank you. I meant to ask this question at your last presentation, so I'll ask it now. What do you think, what services will we lose due to the $14,000 cut to your organization?
It's probably going to impact, I would say, promotional activities that we can do for our businesses. We're going to try to make that up over the next year or so, but the promotional aspect of like social media and the advertising buys that we can do with the co-op advertising, we'll have to cut down on what we can purchase, which will also cut down on the discounts and the amount that our businesses are able to purchase at a discount as well.
Okay, and if I understand it correctly, you were by contract losing $5,000 per year for 3 years,
Correct.
and then for this next fiscal year, you're looking at a $14,000 cut
Correct.
total. Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Was there a question over here? Aaron?
Yes. So I'm glad you said this about the small businesses, because when I'm told about EDC bringing more regional, then I would say, okay, well then UBA is supposed to focus on the small businesses and the small business development and stuff like that. So as it relates to Urbana in particular, since you being the UBA, on one hand, I'm hearing that the EDC is so intricately involved in the development of our downtown and the small businesses. What exactly has the role of the UBA been in those particular businesses?
I say where we pick up is the promotional activities. So when we're talking about our activities directly related to our businesses, we help promote them. They can come to us by advertising at discounted rates. They can bring information to us, and we'll use our platforms to get out to thousands of people through social media and newsletters and different media buys that we have purchased as well. And then we take those businesses and network them together. So we have our networking events and our workshops. So we're constantly promoting our businesses by, like, say for instance, the networking events. The businesses can host them, but the community also comes in, is able to network with the businesses in the community. So it's the networking and connecting and relationship building and promotion that we do for our businesses.
So you don't do business development from the standpoint of what the EDC was talking about?
Not to that extent. We are not staffed to be able to take on those types of projects. So that's where our partnerships come in, as far as, okay, if somebody's coming in for that, small business advice or development, or they're starting a business, we would refer them to the EDC at that point. We do not have the time or the staffing to be able to take on those types of projects.
So the small businesses, for instance, or whatever business in Urbana, really, instead of doing their own promotions and marketing, they basically solicit that from the UBA. That is the most
if you're a member,
significant
yes,
role.
that's one of the biggest benefits of being a member. As long as they bring that information and make it aware make us aware of what they have going on, then we just go to town and promote the heck out of it as much as we can. But they have to make us aware of what they have going on as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much, Paris.
Thank you.
Next up is Jennifer Putman.
Just takes a while to get started. I live at 402 West Delaware Avenue in Urbana, and I should greet some people I've not met before. Most of the city council members I've known for a good long many years. Ms. Wu, Mr. Hazen, and Mr. Miller. Jared Miller, you greeted me personally when I came in, and I didn't even realize that this was a member of the city council who was speaking to me. Forgive me. Hi. I'm here to say thank you, Mayor Marlin. Thank you so much for identifying Sylvia Morgan as the next leader of the Urbana Police Department. I am inspired and elated and pleased and just so happy to know of your choice. This was the good news of the day for me last Saturday, to read Morgan, mayor's pick for top cop. Way to go, man! I was so excited about that. I haven't been elated for a while, and this was wonderful good news. And to think that this person who was educated at the FBI National Academy, who has been an instructor at PTI, one of our own. We didn't have to spend a cent for recruiting or headhunting. She was right here for 24 years. And I didn't even know a Sylvia Morgan until, I'm embarrassed to say, I went to a meeting of the Community Coalition, and arriving a bit late, I was listening to a woman who was speaking. These meetings begin with the reading of rather grim statistics of how many gun-related deaths or serious incidents occurred since the first of the year. But I didn't realize that this was the next chief of police of my city who was speaking. She went on to talk about the previous Saturday being involved in an event in the Vawter and Silver neighborhood, where with Snyder Realty and the NAACP and the Urbana Police Department, Sylvia Morgan had participated in a peace walk, beautification and fellowship. That's how she spent her Saturdays, rolling up her sleeves, being with the people of the neighborhood. Yeah, I'm rolling up my sleeves. Fellowship, neighbors, black and white, young and old, working together, and I thought, way to go, Urbana Police Department. I have a picture that I'm so pleased here that I don't know if we can get it on TV. I was hoping Ms. Morgan might be here. She participated. Sylvia, I didn't even know you were here.
Come on down, Sylvia.
This is a photograph of soon-to-be, no longer interim, but Chief Morgan at the alma mater on National Gun Violence Prevention Day. This day when we were at the Community Coalition meeting, and I didn't realize who was telling us about the neighborhood fellowship day at Vawter and Silver Streets. And I said, I don't know how to say you are, officer, chief, and she said, well, why don't you call me Sylvia? And I just love that self-effacing. I'm so glad you're going to be our chief of police. Thank you very much for inspiring us. And you're not going to see her anything Thursday night, because wouldn't you know, she's going to be helping the Courage Connection leaders, the 5 women who are each who have donated $5,000 to Courage Connection: Naomi Jacobson, Holly Jordan, Dorothy Bell, Anna Merritt, and Helen Satterthwaite. And our chief of police will be presenting information to help the Courage Connection 5,000 project get off the ground. Way to go. Thank you for inspiring me. You're the good news.
This is a great picture.
It's beautiful.
Oh, this is for me?
Yeah.
Oh, well, thank you. That's very nice. Very nice.
Top cop.
Thank you. We're elated that you're elated.
Sure thing.
Next up is Daryl Cruz.
Good evening. It's nice to be in front of the new City Council and Mayor Marlin. I'm very pleased with a new board and wish you the best.
Thank you.
First, I want to acknowledge Sylvia Morgan and the other UPD command officers on their new appointments tonight within the Urbana Police Department. Their experience in and knowledge of the department and the community gives the public confidence that their leadership will continue to move the department to the highest standards of community service and policing professionalism. Welcome and congratulations to those individuals. Because of recent changes on the council and city government, I believe it is both timely and important to once again review the process the city has taken to address traffic stop racial disparities. In several weeks, the state will release its 13th annual traffic stop study, and Melissa Haynes will be making another traffic stop presentation to the city council. I bring this to your attention in light of Traffic Stop Task Force Recommendation 2.3, which reads, the City Council or an appointed commission should review statistical data regarding traffic stops biannually or annually and publicly report on whether progress in reducing traffic stop racial disparities is occurring. It is imperative that you decide who is going to review the totality of this new data that is being presented to you. The investments you have made to this issue the past 3 years have been significant and must not be wasted. You must act upon recommendation 2.3 to ensure that this process continues and this new data is used to inform both the public and the UPD decision-making. 2 approaches were recommended. One that used a city council study and report to the public. This would require more of you than just listening to Mrs. Hayes' presentation in July and asking a few questions. To do justice, it would seem at least 1 or more special study sessions would be required to allow adequate time for public input, council member questions, and serious discussion to arrive at some type of direction as to how the city and the UPD should move forward. If the council is neither willing nor prepared to commit the additional time to complete this task, recommendation 2.3 offers an alternative, appointing a commission. I support this option because an ad hoc commission of, say, 5 individuals would be able to give their undivided attention to reviewing and studying the data. A city council member, a former task force member, a UPD officer, and maybe 2 community members, 1 a minority and Caucasian member, would provide adequate diversity to the commission. After a couple meetings, they could report back to the council. I do not believe that either the Human Relations Commission or the CPRB would be the appropriate vehicles to conduct this review. Neither has been directly involved in the ongoing process of the past 3 years, thus creating a background void that would be hard to overcome. Clearly, the UPD should not be left to do the data interpretation alone. The public must too play a role. As the task force wisely concluded, either you or a commission should be tasked with this important review work. The council must make this decision within the next few weeks as to how it wishes to proceed. Failure to do so would be a significant failure of leadership and commitment to your pledge to the community, especially the African American community, to address this issue to its final conclusion. We finally have an abundance of local traffic stop and related data to make informed policing decisions. Appoint an independent commission of knowledgeable and committed individuals to review this data and report to you whether the city is making progress in reducing traffic stop racial disparities. Thank you.
Thank you. Last item for public input is Bishop King James Underwood. He does not wish to address members of the council, but asks that he's positioned that we are continually concerned about the Dr. Ellis subdivision sewer problem. Aaron?
Just for a bit of public input, I want to wish and inform everyone of today is Juneteenth. If you are not aware of what that is, it is the celebration of when many African Americans were in 1865, I should say June 19th of 1865, finally informed of the Emancipation Proclamation that those African people who had been enslaved were indeed freed, at least in the North. due to the Emancipation Proclamation by Abraham Lincoln. And so in communities all across the country, in particular African-American communities, Juneteenth is seen as a holiday of sorts, but certainly a festival and a celebration to commemorate the, I would say I guess we can say the freeing of the enslaved. How about that? So happy Juneteenth to everybody, just to make sure we're clear about what it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further public input, we'll move on to unfinished business. There's none listed. Reports of the Standing Committee. The Committee of the Whole was chaired by Alderman Aaron Ammons.
All right, so ordinance number 2017-06029, an ordinance amending Urbana City Code Chapter 3, Section 3-43, increasing the number of Class B and MB2 liquor licenses for 25 O'Clock Brewing Company, 208 West Grigg Street, Suite 101, Urbana, Illinois, 61801. The mayor, because Jared has to recuse himself.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It is, again, with great regret that I must recuse myself due to the Liquor Control Act of 1934 from this and all further discussion. Thank you.
Yes, this is providing liquor license to the new microbrewery in downtown Urbana, which is located along the banks of the beautiful Boneyard Creek.
I'd like to second.
Well, I didn't move it.
Oh, I thought it was.
Aaron moved it.
On behalf
Yeah.
of the committee, I so move.
Yes. Moved by Aaron,
I'd like to second it.
seconded by Roberts. Any questions or discussion? All those in,
Do we need voice vote?
roll call?
Better
Or
to do
roll
that.
call, I mean.
Okay. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ammons?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Hazen?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
Wu?
Yes.
Next up, please.
All right, resolution number 2017-06039R, a resolution approving an intergovernmental lease agreement, computer server storage at the county building, IT. On behalf of the committee, I so move.
I'll second.
Moved by Ammons, seconded by Wu. Further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ammons?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Hazen?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller? Wandered out.
He can't, can he vote on that one?
No, yeah, you can.
Yes, he can.
Roberts?
Yes.
Wu?
Yes.
That motion
That
passed.
motion
All right, I
passes.
was trying to give you a chance to say that. All right.
Thank you for the coaching.
All right,
Mr. Ammons.
ordinance number 2017-06026, an ordinance approving the fiscal year 2017. Am I skipping one?
025.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Number 2017-06025, an ordinance amending Urbana City Code Section 38 liquor sale location. On behalf of the committee, I so move.
Second.
Moved by Ammons, seconded by Jacobson. Any further discussion? The clerks, please call the roll.
Ammons?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Hazen?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
Wu?
Yes.
Just
Mr.
from a,
Ammons.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Just from a procedural standpoint, I'm curious as to why we would pass the budget for 2017, 2018, and then revise 2016, 2017. Does it?
Because we're coming up with that. Elizabeth Hannon will explain that. Finance Director.
So as part of developing the budget for 2017-18, one of the things we do is we make revised estimates for fiscal 2017 so that we can more accurately estimate the amount of funds that will carry over into the new fiscal year. So in order to make sure that that is our final constraint, we amend the budget at the end of the year to conform to those estimates, which are substantially lower than the original budget.
So couldn't you just do the estimates of 2016, 2017, then approve the fiscal year of 2017, 2018?
Sure, we could do it in whatever order you like.
I was just wondering, I thought there was some procedural reason why we had to do that
No,
first.
no,
That's why I was
you
asking.
could do them in either order if you
Oh,
please.
okay. I was just wondering. Yeah, Eric.
Yeah, so if I understand, ideally, you do them simultaneously, except that you have to do things one at a time.
Yeah, I think of them as part of the package of ordinances related to the budget. Yeah, so ideally, they would happen simultaneously, but that's not possible.
Yes, the last three ordinances here are the package, the budget package.
Okay. All right, so, ordinance number 2017-06026, an ordinance approving the fiscal year 2017-2018 annual budget.
Are you going to move that?
No, I am not.
I would move to,
Would you like, okay.
well, could we,
Dane?
could we possibly move to amend this or take this up for later discussion regarding the UBA's funding? That's something I think we should discuss more, because our priority is obviously economic growth, and I agree with the EDC and the reasoning behind it. I just don't feel right cutting the UBA at the same time so much anyway. So I guess it's a procedural question, Charlie. Can we separate that and move it for further discussion?
This becomes the same issue that you had last week, trying to separate out a piece of it from the budget itself. You really need to amend the budget in advance of the vote, reflecting the numbers that you want, which takes 5 votes, or you can amend the budget after it's passed, which takes a supermajority.
Yeah.
So,
Elizabeth?
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that typically we amend the budget multiple times throughout the fiscal year, and so there would be ample opportunity to make a change there if council desires to do that.
But we would need a supermajority at that point, right?
Yes.
So it would be probably easier to address it now, or we,
You could try it now. You could move,
so, yeah, so what I'm asking for is...
move the budget with an amendment.
Yeah, can we move the budget with an amendment? And I'm proposing that, you know, we find the money to only, I guess, go with half of that number. If it's proposed to cut 14,000, I would like to find the money to cut that in half to only 7.
So you would like to restore
Seven.
$7,000 to the UBA budget?
Trying to meet in the middle.
Yeah, we're in a really weird place procedurally, because as committee of the whole, we moved to send this to the full council with a recommendation for approval. And we can amend it, but it seems to me that we have an obligation to put the action of the committee of the whole on the table.
On the table.
And then decide what we want to do with it. So I think this is, in my time on the council, it's unprecedented that the person who presided over the committee of the whole is refusing to move forward the action that the committee of the whole voted on.
Hey, I voted no. I don't know what you're talking about. So I don't have to
Well,
move it.
you voted no as an individual, but now you're acting as the chair of the committee of the whole.
Oh, I
and
get
you-
your
I
point.
and you have
think
an
it'd be
obligation
appropriate to let Mr. Simon
your
sort
point.
this out. I
Okay.
think he has the solution.
When the chair of the committee of the whole asked for a vote on the budget, as I recall, you voted no, correct?
Yes.
He has no obligation. It doesn't matter who makes the motion. Obviously, historically, the chairman of the committee of the whole typically moves the items that have been moved on. With some items often are moved without recommendation, and the chairman may, or does usually, probably 99.9% of the time. There's no council or committee rule that requires the chairman to make the motion to approve. He or she normally puts it on, indicates this is the next thing on the agenda as per the report, and it's been recommended by the committee. somebody else, and it's perfectly legitimate, perfectly legal, can move it and second it. As far as Alderperson Hazen's procedural process, you can amend a motion like any other motion, and you can make an amendment that the proposed budget, it's not a budget yet, that the proposed budget reflect whatever changes you're recommending. I have to admit I had a little trouble following whether you want to increase or decrease UBA by 7,000, and you might want to clarify that. And then if the council accepts the amendment, then they vote on the budget, which contains the amendment. As our finance director so carefully laid out, you can always, as we do, as you do throughout the year, come back and move to amend the budget.
And
Bill?
Mayor,
Yes.
if I could add, procedurally, Mr. Hazen could actually move the budget with an additional 7,000 for EDC. If he's got the floor, he could make that motion. Alternatively, the budget as presented could be, so there's two ways to do this. He could present the budget as is proposed, and then he could move an amendment, and there could be a separate vote on that amendment, and then the whole thing. So there's two ways to proceed here.
Bill?
I move approval of ordinance number 2017-06-026, an ordinance approving the fiscal year 2017-2018 annual budget.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Brown, or seconded by Mr. Jacobson. Further discussion?
Well, that's where I step in. I believe I want to motion to, and let me clarify, and I apologize that it wasn't clear earlier. I would like to restore $7,000 of that cut so that they're only being cut 7,000 and not 14,000.
So you want to you want to add $7,000 to the UBA budget?
Correct.
Elizabeth?
That is my motion, yes.
Just to be clear, just for sake of clarity, it'd probably be best to say we want to add $7,000 to the general fund contribution to UBA, since that appears in several funds.
Okay.
But that is where the cut was made, so I assume that's where the addition would go.
So add $7,000 in general fund to the UBA. Is there a second for that?
Yeah, I'll do the
Motion.
second on that one.
All right, so that was made by Dean, seconded by Dennis. Now we need to vote on that amendment. All those in favor?
Can we have discussion?
Yeah, we should discuss.
Discussion?
yeah.
Yes.
So I was trying to scan it, and I apologize for not being able to find it immediately. What was the rationale? Here we go. What was the rationale in terms of removing that? It just says the general fund portion of funding in the Urbana Business Association will be reduced by half, by about 14,000. So I'm curious how that decision came about.
It was part of our overall effort to reduce expenditures in the general fund, and recognizing that most of the UBA funding comes from TIF 2 and the central TIF fund, and then there's a separate funding for the Sweet Corn Festival. But this was part of the overall cost-cutting measures for the budget.
Okay, so if I remember correctly from last week, we said that the contribution was 53, including parking and
50
rentals?
No, 52 or 3, and then parking and the office space rental is in addition to that.
I think it included it. I could be wrong.
No.
No, so the total funds that we're spending out of all the different funds, so the TIF and, whatever else funds that we're taking, we're giving them cash, $53,000 a
Yes,
year.
and then about, the value of the office space was $700 a year, $700 a month, plus a parking space.
7,800 a year, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So roughly, 50 is roughly 60,000 a year. That includes Sweet Corn.
Oh, it includes Sweet Corn, that's,
Yes.
okay. All right. Thank
Eric?
Now, isn't it true also that our marketing for downtown isn't cut by that much, because haven't we inserted a separate item for Imbibe Urbana? Or did we not?
We're considering that.
We're considering
Yeah,
that, okay, so that's
that'll
not
come
in
out of
there yet.
another part of the budget.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, there are several different marketing efforts underway, including the city funds for marketing as well. Any other comments? Aaron?
So if UBA was cut because of overall cost-cutting measures, then why did we add money to the EDC?
Because as Craig explained earlier, my goal is to take steps toward restoring the funding that EDC has been was receiving in the past, to put us more on par with our other partners in the EDC board. And I believe we really need to focus on the regional approach to economic development and workforce development that EDC provides.
But that's just not consistent with cost-cutting when you say, I'm going to cut UBA and then add to EDC. That would, adding to another organization or another entity is just not consistent with cost cutting.
Well, part of the things that go into the thinking is also the job creation. In the past few years, for example, in addition to the counseling that the EDC provides for our entrepreneurs on Main Street and elsewhere in Urbana, they were instrumental in bringing, for example, an office of, I think, about 30 people that's now in the county plaza in the last couple of years. So the two organizations do different things. They're both valuable. The amount of funding that the city provides to the UBA is over twice what, well over twice, 3 times what it's currently providing to the EDC. So it's not a question of, you know, balancing one against the other. This is a reflection of our commitment to economic development.
So I'll just say one more time that cost cutting was what you gave as a reason why UBA would be cut $14,000, and they also focus on promotions and they focus on economic development. So in that vein, cost cutting is the objective. But for EDC, you give them money. So if the overall objective of the budget was to cut costs, then you would not add anything to any particular entity. So that's what I mean by saying that cost cutting is not consistent with giving extra money to a particular entity.
Well, the thing to also keep in mind is the source of funds for these two organizations. The EDC is funded from the general fund. Most of the UBA funding is from the TIF funds, and most of their efforts focus necessarily then focus in downtown. So the emphasis in this budget was on reducing expenditures in the general fund.
And you said that EDC's money is going to come from the general fund, right?
Mm-hmm. $9,500.
Okay, so if the objective is to decrease the impact on the general fund, you decided to make it more of a burden on the general fund by giving extra money to an entity that didn't even solicit it from us. So you can't put the UBA and the EDC in that same conversation. But I just wanted to make sure that the council and the public is very clear about that you're saying two different things to get a particular objective.
Thank you. Bill?
You're welcome.
I appreciate the efforts to evaluate our investments in these organizations on different levels and adjust them as needed. I guess the overall contribution to the UBC would be going down more than, it'd be close to 20%. That seems a little high. I mean, I'd be in favor of adding that amount back. I wonder if really we should probably find some place to cut to balance it out, but it's $7,000, so I don't know. You know, I think it'd be good if you're going to offer an amendment to try to offer the balance of the equation. But at this point, I don't know. $7,000 isn't going to kill us, but it's a bad habit to get into. What's the? We still have would we still be a balanced budget if we added $7,000 back in?
So I think we discussed this earlier when we presented the proposed budget, but the budget we presented isn't balanced according to the standards in our financial policies. It's a step in the right direction, but we don't expect to achieve a balanced budget in terms of having a fund balance that is at least 15% of our recurring expenditures until fiscal 2019. So, yeah, by our own definition, it's not a balanced budget.
We'll just have slightly less in the reserve fund.
But to be clear, we do have recurring expenditures less than recurring revenues, and that's also an important measure of whether it's a balanced budget.
Okay, thanks.
Dean?
Mayor Marlin, I just wanted to say that I respect and understand your decision to increase the money to the EDC. I don't see these as competing issues. I see that the money to the EDC as an investment in the future for growth that will return 10, 20 times what we've invested in it. I'm just trying to soften the blow to the UBA because I think they're also very valuable. I think two things can be true at once, and they're both very valuable, and I'm just trying to soften the blow to them because I think they do so much for the business community.
Well, I appreciate that. So we have an amendment. Did we vote? I've lost track. Have we voted on that? Okay, so I think it's time to,
You've got
okay, Mary Alice.
Sorry, so I'm trying to add up all the different funds here. So we have 14 from general, 20 from TIF 2, another 20 from central, right, TIF, and that doesn't include the sweet corn. Okay, so the sweet corn is separate. So I just want to be clear in terms of where the money's coming from and how much right now is in the budget for the UBA. So if I add that up correctly, 54,000 is the two TIFs and general, not including the sweet corn,
Okay,
and not including the rent and the parking space. So those are the numbers that we have right now without the amendment, just so that we're clear.
Eric?
So in the first place, I think the issue isn't cutting or adding. The issue is establishing priorities. And as I understood these two actions together, although they're separate actions, it's saying we need to invest more in the kind of activity where we are marketing the community to prospective businesses, and that while the marketing of our existing businesses to people who would patronize them is important, that we can cut back on that a little bit. But in this context, I wanted to ask, is it possible that Imbibe Urbana could be supported through the Urbana Business Association? Could that be a derivative activity or a sub-area?
That's always a possibility, yeah. So we could be looking at that in the future. But at this point, that's not in the UBA budget.
So,
But we can,
yeah, I think, okay, so I think that Imbibe Urbana is really worth supporting. I understand that if we do any budget amendments in the future, we would need a supermajority after tonight. But what I would like to do is, I think I'm going to vote against the amendment. Maybe it'll pass, maybe not. But I would be very happy to entertain a budget amendment, that would come to us in the future, whose effect would be to support Imbibe Urbana, whether that would be independent or whether that would be through UBA.
well, Imbibe is currently in discussions with the city regarding funding, and it may be able to occur within the context of the current budget. So it wouldn't necessarily require a budget amendment. So don't worry, we got it covered. Okay, so we have on the floor, Dennis.
Well, this has been a pretty interesting conversation, and I missed maybe the antecedent last week, but I believe that the support for the downtown businesses is very important. I think they feel it's very important. And handling economic development on a regional level is good, sound policy, but I do feel that we're always going to be somewhat overshadowed by our larger neighbor, and that the results of that will only be proportionate to our size. And therefore, I think that encouraging and promoting through social media and other fields our own local Main Street businesses, which is the job of the UBA, is going to be most served by supporting the amendment that we just have in front of us. And I know that at the end of the year, we always find that there's a certain percentage of expenditures which aren't expended for various reasons, and that at the end of the year, I think we'll find that there will be $7,000 left in the general fund, which will not become an issue. Now, if this was $70,000, this would be a terrible issue, but $7,000 is not, so I think I can support it.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to add $7,000 in the general fund to be allocated to the UBA. And the second was,
It was myself.
and the motion was Dean's. Okay. Jared?
I hate to draw this out any longer, but I just want to make vocal support for Imbibe Urbana as well. I'll support this amendment, but I think that we have to take serious consideration into supporting what Imbibe is doing.
It is being taken seriously.
Yeah, just want to put that out there to also to fellow council members if anyone was not aware of what they're doing. They're doing some pretty awesome things.
Okay. Do we need a
That
voice
is all.
vote on that or roll call?
Voice is sufficient.
Okay, all those in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign.
Nay.
2 nays and 1, 2, 3. It passes. Now we'll vote on the main motion, which is for ordinance 2017-06-026, which is an ordinance approving the fiscal year 2017-2018 annual budget.
I'll move approval.
It's already on,
It's been on the floor.
Oh, it's already on the table?
it's just been amended. It's been moved
Okay.
and amended. So the motion on the floor is the main motion as amended by,
No, just have to vote now.
Okay, will the clerk, is there any discussion? Mary Alice?
I just have a general discussion. I think I already said it last week. I'm really appreciative to everybody helping me learn about this budget. Everybody's been really helpful with their time. I just have a request for next year. So next year, I think it would be really beneficial for myself and hopefully for others if the requests that are made to the mayor prior to the budget being formed are provided to council. Elizabeth sent me a whole list of what the departments had requested so that I could have a better understanding of what budget was being proposed and ultimately what items were denied. So I'd just like to make that request. I don't really have a comment on this budget, but in terms of for next time.
So noted, thank you. Aaron?
So I just want to say that before this vote goes down, I want to say that while we're entertaining these additions to the EDC and the UBA, which was very clearly articulated how much money the UBA already gets from us for, I don't know, what could be seen in many folks' eyes as questionable as to what that impact is for the taxpayers, to go back and add now $7,000 more, which would now basically be on top of the $9,600 that the EDC is going to get as well. What we're ultimately saying is that Urbana is going to somehow become the hub of business activity because of this $17,000 now that we're going to give to two other agencies that we already fund pretty decently at this particular point. So the EDC is somehow going to become, they're going to do some astronomical changes for us in the city of Urbana because they're going to get another $10,000, and that UBA is going to all of a sudden fly off the charts and do an amazing job of promotions because they're going to get this $7,000 back. So while I support wholeheartedly economic development, we have a department for economic development, and both of these entities get money from us for economic development. I think we need to look at some other things and to look at the budget that we're faced with. Because while we're saying we're going to add these money to these groups, that doesn't look like it's going to really add a whole lot of value to what they do. We're going to say, let's go to the taxpayers in a few minutes and say, let's get some more money from the taxpayers as well. And so I just don't see how this is a wise decision for us as a council, so I will be voting no.
Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ammons?
No.
Brown?
Yes.
Hazen?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
Wu?
Yes.
Mayor Marlin?
Yes, that motion passes. Mr. Ammons?
Ordinance number 2017-06027, an ordinance revising the annual budget ordinance for FY 2016-17, fiscal year 2016-2017 estimates. On behalf of the committee, I so move.
I'll second.
That's a tie.
I surrender because
Motion by Ammons, second by Jacobson. Any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ammons?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Hazen?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Miller?
Yes.
Roberts?
yes.
Wu?
Yes.
Mayor Marlin?
Yes.
Ordinance number 2017-06028, an ordinance amending Urbana City Code, Chapter 22-91, Food and Liquor Tax, and only because I'm the chair, on behalf of the committee, I so move.
I'll second that.
Seconded by Jacobson. Any discussion? Jared?
Pursuant to the Liquor Control Act of 1934, I must remove myself from this vote. So sorry, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you. Further discussion? Mary Alice?
So I'm going to vote for this, just to be clear. I would like, if we are going to be doing something in the future, for example, motel hotel tax or some other tax that we're going to increase, I would like for the city to reach out specifically to those entities that would be collecting that and it would be impacting their businesses, to ask them what their thoughts were on this. So as I said, I'll be voting on this, but I just think for the future, if we're going to be doing anything like this, I would like to see that information to help inform our decision.
Aaron?
So just to make sure that I get this on record again, the vote that was taken by the previous council to increase the number of police officers because it was supposed to increase safety somehow, which we have not seen that take place. The many members of this council voted yes for that, which was a $200,000 increase in the middle of a budget year, although the finance director said that would possibly lead to possible layoffs later in the future. Many members of this council decided to vote yes for that, and now we have to go back and fix that. And then we need to, on top of that, we want to give a UBA and EDC some more money, all to go back to the taxpayers and say, let's increase the food and beverage tax to 1.5 while Champaign is 0.5. So we hear lots on this council about staying competitive with Champaign. And Champaign is at 0.5. We're going to go to 1.5. And so to address the bad decision that was done in under the last council, which I voted no for, and to address these increases that are being proposed, we have, and to cover the salary proposally for the city administrator that we're going to have to hire. Now we have to go and ask the people to increase the taxes on the people once again, and using what many consider, and I consider, another regressive tax to cover those particular things. I believe it is a bad decision, so I will be voting no.
Any further discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ammons?
No.
Brown?
Yes.
Hazen?
Yes.
Jacobson?
Yes.
Roberts?
Yes.
Wu?
Yes.
Do I vote? Okay, that concludes the report of the standing committee. Any reports of special committees? Reports of officers? Charlie, we have one.
It just would be appropriate to get consent of the council to postpone, or to postpone the July 3rd council meeting to July 10th.
Can we have a show of hands if that's acceptable to the city council? Okay, so our July 3rd council meeting will be canceled. Well, it'll be moved to July 10th. New business, ordinance number 2017-06-032, which is an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance, addition of section 13-8 to create the Southeast Urbana Overlay District and special procedures. And this is Plan Commission case number 2302T17. We have Lori Pearson and Leila Bagby from Community Development.
Leila's going to be taking the lion's share, but this is Leila Bagby, Community Development Associate, with us for a few months, but we'll be leaving in a few months to go back, or a few weeks, excuse me, to go back to school. So,
thank you, Lori. Thank you for being here and staying so late to listen to this tonight. So, we have the Southeast Urbana. It's an amendment to the zoning ordinance to create the Southeast Urbana Overlay District and the special procedures. So a little bit of an introduction. The creation of this overlay district was in response to neighborhood and resident concerns over, neighborhood safety and quality of life. We have the proposed special procedures would require special use permit for new construction, major additions, major renovations. The special use permit would be evaluated on whether it can meet the guidelines for construction, which are based on the crime prevention through environmental design principles. A little bit of background. This is the area commonly referred to as the Silver Water area. There are low-density residential uses adjacent to high-density and in close proximity to a commercial area over here. So in response to resident concerns in this area, a former city intern and University of Illinois master's student, Maximilian Mahalik, conducted this study here, the Silver Water Area Safety Planning Solution Study. He identified a number of kind of maintenance issues, site design, problematic site designs, and some crime. And so in response to all of this, one of the recommendations he had was to incorporate SEPTED into the zoning regulations to promote safety, and SEPTED is crime prevention through environmental design. So these are passive strategies incorporated into the built environment and are intended to deter crime. They are based on kind of 4 key factors here: natural surveillance, maintenance, territoriality, and accessibility. So we can see a number of how crime prevention through environmental design are used across the country. This is just one example in Sarasota, Florida, and they incorporated SEPTED into their zoning regulations in their North Trail area. And this is a before and after picture of just one site. And what they saw there was a statistically significant decrease in calls for service in that area. So some of the public input in the Mahalik study, he worked with the SUNA neighborhood, it's a Southeast Urbana Neighborhood Association, and then he conducted stakeholder interviews. He worked closely with the people in the neighborhood as well. And then let's see, we have this October meeting with SUNA, and that kind of spurred some of the research and discussion that went into the creation of this. And at the last Plan Commission meeting, several audience members spoke, and all were in favor. Okay. Proposed regulations. So this is the location of the proposed district. This is a subset of Mahalik's study. Here we have Philo in Colorado. This is Anderson. We have Harding, and this is Mumford. Is it Mumford? Yes, Mumford. Okay. So the proposed procedures indicate that a special use permit would be required for certain situations, and that would be for new construction of multifamily residential structures, large additions, which would be an increase in the building footprint by more than 15%, and then major renovations, and that would be major renovations that would result in an estimated construction cost of more than 50%. So a special use permit would not be required for commercial buildings, duplexes, single-family homes, or minor changes to multifamily residential buildings. Criteria, so the review and administration of the district would be through the special use permit process. It would be the usual procedures, and in addition, whether the special use permit is in conformance with the guidelines for construction, which have been created here. They are, okay, guidelines for construction. So they are based on the SEPTED principles that we mentioned earlier, and that is natural surveillance, maintenance, territoriality, and accessibility. There are 9 of them, and I'm just going to go through a couple of examples here. They look at things such as access networks and points, making sure that they are continuous and connected, landscaping and screening, maintaining clear visibility, lighting, avoiding excessive glare and avoiding shadows, entrances and exits, making sure that the entrances and exits are clearly visible from the street. This is another before and after of one location. None of these pictures are from Urbana. They're just pictures from other examples. Okay, the comprehensive plan. So the intent of the Southeast Urbana Overlay District is consistent with the Urbana Comprehensive Plan as it relates to neighborhoods. There are 2 goals that are listed in the memo. So in summary, the creation of the Southeast Urbana Overlay District is an extension of the Silver Border Area Safety Planning Solutions. Increases in crime, reduction in overall maintenance and condition of multifamily properties, as well as high-density residential to low-density residential, has created concerns and challenges. And then the zoning administrator proposes the establishment of the Southeast Urbana Overlay District and the special procedures. The overlay district would require a special use permit for construction of new multifamily structures, major additions, or major renovations. And the proposed district would encourage developers to incorporate these SEPTED principles into new or renovated developments. And the proposed amendment is consistent with the 2005 Urbana Comprehensive Plan. All right. So the options, the City Council has the following options in regard to Plan Case 2302 T17. Approve the amendment as presented, approve with specific suggested changes, or deny the amendment. At the June 8, 2017 meeting, the Urbana Plan Commission voted to forward the plan case to the Urbana City Council with the recommendation for approval, and staff concurs with this.
Are there any questions for staff? Mary Alice?
I have a couple of questions. Some of them are procedural because I'm new. So can you describe to me really briefly how the special permit use actually works?
Sure. It involves an application submitted to the staff. Then that application is taken forward in a public hearing at Plan Commission. The Plan Commission then would make a recommendation to City Council, who has the final decision.
Okay. All right. So it just, I'm familiar with the Design Review Board, but I'm not familiar with the special permits. Okay, and then I was trying to scan here because I did read the notes of the meeting, but I know that there had been some mention about if we're relying on landscaping in a large part in terms of ensuring compliance with these rules, and it looked to me like landscaping was the only thing that was mandatory. The landscaping plan is the only thing mandatory to be provided for consideration. How do we make sure that the landscaping stays in good quality?
There's another section in the ordinance that requires, well, there's a couple sections. One requires that a project is up to snuff. What's the technical term for up to snuff on their landscaping? But
Compliant.
What's that?
Compliant?
Thank you. So there's 2 things. There's the usual standard condition in a special use permit is that a site needs to be consistent or compliant with the site plan that's attached. That would include the landscape plan. So if you go back in 3 years and the plants are all dead, you could, of course, enforce on that. But also the zoning ordinance in general requires you to keep your landscaping compliant with general standards. So there's a couple different ways we could get to
So
it.
if I'm understanding correctly, because I'm thinking, well, we don't have anything that says my bush can't be larger than 7 feet tall or whatever it may be, but because it's under the special permit usage here, there are those restrictions in terms
Correct.
of, so that
Right.
would supersede whatever other, it would be in addition to other city rules. Is that
yes.
correct?
Mhm, that's
Okay, all right. Those are my questions. Thank you.
Any other questions? Aaron?
Does the new overlay, would it have any impact on the ability for folks to rent? So the zoning has nothing to do with any of the housing?
Nothing to do with ownership or rentals, no, just construction.
Any other questions? Jared and then Dennis?
Hey, Lori. So I obviously haven't had a chance to discuss one-on-one with you the zoning ordinance. I've read it thoroughly and read all the minutes, and there was quite interesting discussion that happened on the board about it, a lot of things that I probably would have asked myself. Can you explain a little bit to me about the overarching philosophy behind this thing outside of the principles that it was stemmed from?
So the overall philosophy on SEPTED, or?
Yeah, just like where the city's going with this. Like, you know, it's one step to helping do something in this neighborhood.
Right, it's not going to be a fix-all to all issues, of course, but
And
it is
doesn't-
something that we can do.
It doesn't affect anything currently right now at all.
That is correct.
Okay, it's only something that would affect a new construction.
Or a major addition
or
or
improvements.
renovation.
So is there more to this strategy moving forward?
Well, I think there might be things outside of zoning that could have a bigger impact. We, of course, do enforcement in the area. I don't know if the police chief, to be, wants to make any comments, but in terms of zoning, we can do this. There's some other things we could look into, but zoning is constrained to what you're building on a site and the uses on a site. So we can't really go beyond that. So this is one little step that we can take that will at least get to the future construction.
Okay, and it brings up just one concern that Alderman Ammons raised as well about folks living there and looking at how their lives may be affected going forward. Some residents have lived there for a very, very long time, much longer than I've been here, much longer than I've been alive, some of them. So I have concerns about those residents as well, but it doesn't sound like this particular thing is going to affect them per se.
The idea is that new development or significant renovations to buildings will help improve and stabilize the neighborhood and increase the quality of life. So I would see if there is an impact, it would be a positive one, certainly not a negative one.
Okay, I just want to put that out. Concerns for the future. I know that there are a number of residents there, older residents who are on fixed incomes and things of that nature, and should a building come up for sale and a major renovation be proposed, some of those folks don't have the ability to increase their rent because they're on fixed incomes and stuff like that. So I just want to put that out there that, you know, we have to be concerned about folks who would be there so that if somebody did come, they have to, you know, abide by it, and then the rent goes up, that we're protecting those folks in some form or fashion so they can enjoy the improvements without suffering the costs as well.
The trigger for the special use permit is a pretty high bar to reach, so it would need to be a very significant renovation. I will also point out that the architect on the Plan Commission did mention that these are all things that people generally design in anyway.
Yeah, I read that.
So it's just a matter of making it a little more explicit rather than implicit.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Dennis?
Yeah, I found I find that the intent for this is, I guess, admirable. I kind of feel like that this is throwing a bone to the SUNA Group Neighborhood Association to try to bring to them a feeling that the city is actually being yet more proactive in creating safety in a neighborhood that where the built environment doesn't seem to be likely to change in the near future very much. unless there's demolition, and there have been demolitions there in the past. So I felt like David Trail on the commission raised a lot of really interesting questions, and I guess maybe I'd like to hear a little more explanation about direction or the use of this. In the past, people have talked about, well, okay, first I'll say that from the Huna neighborhood, the historic East Urbana neighborhood where I live, we do have a design overlay in our neighborhood, and we did down zoning. That really addressed the problem of the impact of high density adjacent to residential, duplex, and single family homes. And it also addressed quality construction as seen from the street concerning compatibility. Because we have, you know, old historic homes, and all of a sudden you have a barn built that doesn't even have a front door facing the street and no windows, and so that's inappropriate. And so I can understand how zoning is used to try to make those kinds of improvements. It's really a kind of a new thing to me to talk about how you're using a design review overlay district to change crime ratios in a community, which would normally, if you go, when we went through the a bus ride through the neighborhoods a couple years ago, the police chief said that the main tool for reducing crime in a high crime area that is full of rentals and high density is proper building management. So this seems to be like really like wafer thin as far as usefulness. Except, okay, I'm not going to say that it's not useful. And the question came up: if it's useful here for high density construction and residential to prevent crime, why aren't we applying it citywide? And the reason, of course, is that we only made a study in a little tiny corner of the city, and therefore we have data that supports the fact that this area wants it. But it seems to me, okay, and we're saying here that this is a trial experience, so I get that. But if you find that you can support this kind of an overlay district, which pretty much just doesn't even require the future development to have non-indented doors and entrances. It doesn't require them to do it if they don't want to, but it's really suggesting that it would be a great idea to do it. So I mean, the conversation that occurred in the commission, whether these things shouldn't be just compulsory because they're good design and it's what you want, but then you're not requiring them to do it. It's almost like, well, so why even ask them? And then the second is, if it's good enough for this area and it's felt that this significantly reduces crime, why aren't we talking about it on a much larger scale, or to all, 4 and 5 are, construction sites for the future? So I don't know. Maybe I just need more justification. I'm not totally against it, because I think maybe, a penny is worth something, but this is not a dollar fix. So talk to me about the conversation that was raised on the Planning Commission, and why you still support it, because it seems to me kind of just a thought rather than a deed.
Well, I think I'll go back a little bit and talk a little bit more about the special use permit, because although none of the guidelines are required, by definition they're guidelines, the idea of a special use permit is to look at the entire package and you evaluate the project as a whole. So for a particular project, one of these might not apply. It might not be possible. For instance, if you're doing an addition to put a bunch of windows in the front, maybe you're putting the addition on the back. So the reason to do guidelines and not, a checklist is because not all projects are exactly the same, and to write code language that would apply to all projects would be a 60-page endeavor. So what we wanted to do was to provide that guidance, which, as I mentioned, the architect on Plan Commission did think that most of them are doing that anyway, just a matter of putting it out. But it's a way for a board like the Plan Commission and like City Council to evaluate a project as a whole. So that's really the purpose of the guidelines. For any projects that would not be required to do a special use permit, we can always point to that and say, have you considered these types of things? As something out there in order to really get the word out that there are some design solutions that other communities have shown have worked to really get at some of the issues that this neighborhood in particular is experiencing.
Is there like a file of images of preferred versus problematic construction examples for facades, entrances, and windows and layout that accompany this that we haven't seen?
Well, we didn't put any in the code. I mean, Leila did a lot of research on this, so there's probably thousands of images that are out there. That was just not an approach that we thought was necessary because it seemed, at least to us, perhaps it's not to everyone else, that the text gave enough guidance without being too, without really dictating what to do, but giving someone an idea on what kind of end result would really lead to success. So,
Max's report actually provided those images in the city council. I believe you got a copy of the executive summary. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years, so I don't remember specifically. And then, do you think that when a special permit was being evaluated by a developer who proposed an addition or a new construction, do you think that the Planning Commission would actually turn down the permit if they felt that the visibility sight lines around the front door were problematic? Would they turn down a $650,000 project because the accessibility to the front door didn't meet these guidelines?
well, long before the Plan Commission would see it, the staff would definitely work with the developer and the architect to make sure that the project, as staff saw it, met as many of those requirements as was practical for that project. So hopefully by the time Plan Commission would get it, it would be a project that they would be able to approve.
That's the hope. I wonder if that's the truth. Okay.
Eric and then Aaron.
So I guess there is, seems to me that there is a significant body of research that says that these measures are effective, that there are things you can do architecturally that
I think they're effective. I just don't know if they're being enforced by us.
But I think that Dennis is, and it also seems to me, although I'm not a developer, that the kinds of choices that are being mandated here are really not going to increase the cost of any project significantly. They're just alternative ways of doing things, and what this really does is it puts the crime prevention aspect, visibility, access, and so forth, it puts it in the mix of choices that a developer makes. So I'm totally for this. I think the point that Dennis makes that is perhaps a good one, though, is shouldn't these aspects of design influence development everywhere, not just in targeted neighborhoods?
Was that a rhetorical question?
No, actually, well, it's sort of a, well, yes, it is and it isn't. Okay, so I mean, it's a rhetorical question in the sense that you can infer that the question implies, oh yeah, they ought to be considered citywide, and so I'm going to guess that the non-rhetorical answer to the question is that you're proposing to start in areas where there's high crime, but that at the end of the day. So let me ask a non-rhetorical question. Are there cities that impose these design principles citywide without respect to whether an area has been targeted as a high crime area?
Leila, do you recall from your research if any was citywide? I think many of them or
They're-
more neighborhood specific?
Yeah, they're all, the case studies that I looked at, they're all very specific to a neighborhood or to an area. And those are there's just 3 that are included in here, but there are other ones out there.
Aaron, and then Bill.
So, the special use permit, in the future, if someone wanted to build another multifamily building that was high density, what is the likelihood that that would be approved?
A special use permit is very site-specific, so I certainly can't throw a number out there. It would need to meet the underlying zoning. So you say high density, but it would still need to conform with the zoning that's there, whether it's the R4 or the R5. So they couldn't exceed that as part of this process necessarily, but it would need to go through the process. It would need to get the public hearing. It would need to go through Plan Commission and then ultimately come to City Council.
So, just for me, in summation, what it sounds like to me is that much like when the two ladies showed up saying that they felt safer if we had more police officers, and we ultimately got more police officers, now people are saying they would feel safer if we had these procedures that were put in place in Varder again, particular area. And it sounds like if a developer wants to do more high-density multifamily buildings, because the study shows that that's where most of the crime occurred, then that would be, that would not be allowed, or that would be some problem with that because of the density. Because density only becomes a problem in certain neighborhoods. It's not a problem on campus. So, would that result, what about mixed income or an affordable housing? How does that affected by this zoning?
None of that gets taken into account in zoning. That's
It's going to be
totally
at the second
separate.
phase
So,
or a different phase.
in terms of your other comment, the density isn't what's at question here. The guidelines for construction really get at how something looks, how it's designed, how it functions. So it's, I think it's maybe a little bit different way to look at it. So.
Multifamily, and the area that I'm thinking of, if I'm not mistaken, these are apartments with lots of units in them?
Do you mean the area of the overlay? Is that
Yes.
what? For the most part, there is that commercial corner, of course. I mean, somewhat of a mix, but all of the underlying zoning is multifamily zoning, except for the corner, which has commercial underlying zoning. So one would expect apartments to be in all of most of the area there, with the exception of the corner, which we would expect to have commercial uses.
So for me, it would be really nice to understand more thoroughly the complete process, because somewhere in this process, my experience tells me that we didn't go through all of this just so we could have the same process that we already have. There's an intent behind this, and the intent is to address the crime in particular. And what sort of buildings get built is going to be one of the primary ways that we address these particular crime
Well,
issues of concern.
how a building gets built. That's
Okay,
really what it gets
how a
down to.
building gets built, and it repeatedly refers to multifamily, which means to me density, right? And it's going to mean income levels. It's going to mean all of those particular things, because in this society that we live in, low-income, dense areas mean crime to people. So if we have mixed income, I'd be much more supportive of something like this, right? Because if you have mixed income in more dense areas, then you have actually more eyes and ears in a place, and you don't have the level and concerns of crime. So I'm very concerned about an overlay strategy that's not being implemented for across the city, and specifically in a particular neighborhood that seems to get a response when it wants a response.
I can add a little bit to that. The process that Max Mahalik went through to gather this data was very extensive, and it included the neighborhood. There were a number of surveys of the neighborhood. I remember I spent hours at the county market when it was still open, surveying people shopping there. We had a number of different methods of reaching out to both the people who lived in the shaded area here, as well as people who lived in the adjacent on the adjacent streets. And the comments that were received included things like the need for more lighting, more direct connections to the shopping areas between this neighborhood and the Philo Road area, concern about recessed doorways, concern about the vegetation surrounding houses, concern about the fact that really, if you're going to be, one of the best ways to deter crime is to have eyes on the street, but if there are no windows facing the street, it's hard to have eyes. So a lot of the physical environment, and that's his study was a capstone project for, I believe, in urban planning. So his focus was on how environmental factors affect people's safety, perceptions about safety, and overall quality of life. And there's extensive involvement of the neighborhood and at least one city council member doing these surveys. So all of that feedback from the residents and the surrounding neighborhood were taken into account in the study, and I can send you, a link to his study. It was really quite extensive. It involves a whole lot of photos of the existing buildings and the problem areas that people saw. So it's a direct result of feedback from the neighborhood, including the residents, most importantly from the residents. So anyway, other questions? Dean?
This is more of a statement. I just wanted to say that crime prevention through environmental design may have been called something different, but it's nothing new to me. I remember this from the early 90s in Minneapolis, and they had a lot of success with this, and in other big cities. They may have called it something different, but it's got a long track record of success, and it's just really just common sense stuff. It's
Okay. Bill, and then Dennis.
Yeah, I agree that environmental design and construction of neighborhoods has an impact on crime prevention. But neighborhoods also change, and what was built there 50 years ago, it probably wasn't a high crime area then, and I'm wondering what areas we're building now that are, may be considered middle class, upper class areas, or may not, it may be a problem in the future, 30 years from now. So it does it's a little strange targeting one specific area, but it's also, so I think the guidelines in general are good. I wonder if when you promote this to the developer, or present it to the developer, would you have some kind of marketing materials or some kind of pamphlet that kind of goes through them in a simple form other than what's in the zoning ordinance? And if you could develop something like that, could you just provide that to basically anybody that is thinking about doing a R4, R5 construction projects, say, well, these are some of the things we suggest for environmental design to keep your apartments safe for the next 50 years.
Sure, as long as Leela shows me where she has hidden all those thousands of photos of examples so we can put that together.
And then as far as the special use permit goes, I think the process is a little bit, vague, and it makes it hard to predict what the plan commission or the council, for that matter, might decide on something when you say it has to be in conformance with the intent of the guidelines for construction. That can be interpreted a lot of ways. I know you probably have to do that, and that's probably up to us and the plan commission to try to be consistent when we apply it. But those are the types of things where if you have a few angry neighbors, they can come in and try to point out that this part isn't consistent, and then so I think as plan commissioners and council members, we have to be aware of that. It seemed like there was and then also with the special use permit, that just goes with the use. So if one of the B3 buildings were to be converted to a church or something, would that, how would that impact things?
I think we might be able to make a case that it would apply if it were converted to apartments, but it would still need to be a multifamily use in order for any requirement to apply. Then, because it is an existing building, we'd need to, of course, look to see what the renovation costs would be versus the property costs. But the reason we included the commercial area at the corner was in the event apartments were to be built above or scrape the site and build them. But it's the multiple family use that we were looking at.
Right, okay. So then, okay, and there aren't any special use permits there now, so whatever, if somebody were to reconstruct one of those B3 properties into a multi-use property, they would get the special use.
Correct.
And it would be hard to see how that would be converted to something else. Okay, that works. Thanks.
Dennis?
Yeah, I just had one other thought as we were, as I was listening to conversation here. Probably the best example of disaster in construction of high-density residence, which resulted in high crime calls and for the police department, and also a warren of hiding places, was the Urbana Townhome site, which originally was designed as a rather upscale, multifamily building unit. That became probably the most police call site in the Learman neighborhood on the corner of East Washington and South Learman. Well, we've removed that, we've demolished it, and that plot of land is now open for development. Is there a reason that it wasn't considered as another location to put an overlay district that you're creating today? I mean, you didn't necessarily survey it specifically, but surveys have been done in the Learman neighborhood, which would bring you a lot of the concerns of the neighbors, which are identical to the Vaughter district. And it is also an open plot of land right now that will be developed and needs to be developed with sensitivity in the same reasons. For the same reasons, because it is a high crime neighborhood, or had been until fairly recently. So I just was wondering why, do you foresee extending this overlay district to that plot of land before construction starts, or is that not likely to be a necessity?
Well, Leela tells me that a project like that might be subject to the housing quality standards in terms of as a condition of getting their funding. I can be corrected over there if necessary, but I'm guessing that that kind of development project already has quite a number of eyes looking at it. So a lot of these types of things might already be taken care of at a level that doesn't need to be taken care of by us. But as you mentioned earlier, yes, there was a study done on this particular, the Silver Vaughter area, and that does provide the data, that does provide the input and the public outreach that would support this kind of a text amendment.
Okay, thanks.
Libby Tyler?
I just had a general comment. Having been involved in a lot of these neighborhood plans, this isn't really a one-size-fits-all solution. This effort is just one of the outcomes from the Mahalik study, where the planning intern worked with the neighborhood and looked at the problems, and there's a very unique zoning situation in this neighborhood where there's a pocket of multifamily adjacent to a lot of single family and commercial. And so we looked at, can we adjust that zoning pattern, because it was creating a lot of incompatibility. We didn't find a good lawful way to do the downzoning like we did in East Urbana, but this was a way to at least take a special use permit review with SEPTED in mind for any new multifamily, since that was identified as a primary concern in that neighborhood. For the Learman neighborhood, we have a different neighborhood planning effort that was undertaken that we're also implementing with LNAC, and there's different types of proposals that have been recommended there. And completely different character, different planning study. We'll be looking at a new redevelopment, which will be subject to other standards and requirements for mixed income housing or whatever we decide to do. We're just beginning that process for Urbana Townhomes. We're trying to get redevelopment and renovations done for Aspen Court. So it's just a whole other package of needs. Historic East Urbana, different approaches, West Urbana. We're working with Habitat in the King Park neighborhood. We've done a plan in Crystal Lake Park as well. Each neighborhood has its own personalities, its own needs. I don't know that SEPTED and doing special use permit reviews for multifamily housing in other parts of Urbana is necessarily called for or really what those neighborhoods need. But we'll see how this goes, and maybe it's something that we'll do more of.
Aaron?
So the first thing I would like to do is to see if we can move this back to the committee for further discussion, so we don't have to try to hash it out tonight, because Libby just brought up a whole nother set of concerns for me that, but I don't want to have to keep going through them over and over again this evening. It's getting late. So I will move that we move this back to committee for further discussion.
I'll second.
It's moved by Aaron, seconded by Jared. Is there further discussion? Bill?
It didn't come from committee, it came from Plan Commission, so does that mean we want to schedule it to committee to try to send it back to Plan Commission?
Well, if it came from Plan Commission and came to the full council, if we put it back in committee for further discussion, we could just bring it back to council, right?
Would it have to be reapproved by Plan Commission then?
Well, no, not, I mean, if it was totally thrown out and it was different from what the legal advertising said, for instance, that would be another issue. We would have to redo all the process, the public hearing, legal ad, that kind of thing. But if it's consistent with that, then, unless Jim can correct me, no, it wouldn't need to go back to Plan Commission.
Okay.
Eric?
I personally am ready to pass on this tonight. I would like to have a discussion in the future of broader applicability of the SEPTED principles. How might these be applicable in other areas of the city? I see only good in passing this ordinance for this area. I think the question is there more that we can do with these principles in other parts of the city?
Well, we have a motion and a second to send this back to committee, which would be June 26th. Mary Alice?
Just so I'm clear, so you had touched on the fact that legal notice would have to be redone, all of that work would have to be redone if we changed something. So
If it was significant change that no longer met the intent of the legal ad. So we don't include the exact language in the legal ad, for instance. We say that we're going to be changing an article to do kind of X, Y, and Z sort of thing.
But if it goes back to committee and the committee says, okay, well, we want to expand this, for example, we want to make it a bigger area, would it then have to go back to legal?
Yes, definitely.
So I guess I'm kind of on the same page as Eric here. I think that absolutely we need to have further conversation about other areas, and certainly what Libby said I take to heart. I live in West Urbana. It's a very unique neighborhood with very different needs than, historic East Urbana, and we have our own Lincoln-Busey corridor. I think there can be more that's done in the city of Urbana, and I think that we need to consider what is the unique characteristics of those neighborhoods. I think, but or to move this forward for this case, it's not that we can't take what we learn here and apply it to other areas and have that conversation. And I fully support you, Aaron, on that, and having that conversation at the committee of the whole and figuring out what we can be doing in other neighborhoods. But I think for this particular one, I think I'm in support of moving this now.
Well, we have a motion on the floor, so I'd like to call the vote on that motion, which was, pardon?
And Jared does as well.
Okay, we'll take Jared and then Aaron.
Mayor House, I would just express my concern, having, obviously, I've not been around as long as a lot of you guys have. In my limited experience of watching 8 months of council meetings prior to being elected and being on council gives me only limited experience, but I've often watched this council put off and say, let's talk about it later, let's talk about it later, let's do this later, let's talk about this later. And I think that there's worthwhile discussion here to talk about before moving forward on this particular one, in light of the fact that it will not, in the immediate future, cause any effect whatsoever on the ground, on the streets for the folks who live there. I mean, it doesn't do anything. Right now, it doesn't do anything. In the future, it might, but we've got time. Nobody's planning on renovating those buildings right now that I'm aware of. So I think that the conversation that is going around this is important, and that we should consider it in larger context prior to moving forward, would be my argument to you.
Aaron.
Jared basically summed it up, and there's just some things that we have to deal with around the impact, the possible impact, and we have time to discuss it. So,
Okay, there's a motion to send this to committee, which would be Committee of the Whole on June 26th. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All those opposed?
Nay.
Nay.
I need a show of hands. All those in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? The hands have it. The ayes have it. This will go to committee on June 26th. Okay, next up we have a number of appointments to boards and commissions, as well as the annual staff appointments. We'll start with the appointments to boards and commissions, and these are either new members coming on or new designations, and then the annual city council appointments. So for the Sustainability Advisory Commission, I'm recommending appointment of Dustin Allred, who has lived in the city of Urbana for the last 11 years. He's currently a lecturer in the Department of Urban and Regional Planning at the U of I. And Stacy Gloss is an existing member of the Sustainability Advisory Commission, and she has agreed to serve as chair, and she replaces Maria Ryan, whose service I would like to acknowledge and thank very much. She was with the Sustainability Commission from the beginning and oversaw the writing of the sustainability plan. For the Fire Pension Board, recommending Richard Schnoer. He has 30 years experience as a trustee for the Champaign Fire Pension Board. He retired recently as the finance director in the city of Champaign, and he has extensive experience investing public funds and with pension funding issues. And then there are several boards and commissions with city council representatives. I'm recommending Bill Brown for the BPAC, Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, Jared Miller for the Library Board, Eric Jacobson, Public Arts Commission, staff member Brandon Boyce for the EDC Board, and he also serves as a member of the UBA Board. He's the Economic Development Manager in the city. And Natalie Kenny Marquez will continue as the staff board member for the Visit Champaign County Board. Is there a motion on this set?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Moved by Aaron, seconded by Eric. Bill, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I don't see Aaron Ammon's name on here anywhere. What commission is he on? What board is he on?
Everyone was given ample opportunity to volunteer for these boards. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Okay, next set of appointments, and I'm going to read the names because I do want to acknowledge the contribution of each of these community members. These are volunteer positions, and they devote a lot of time and energy to these boards, and we're very grateful for their service. So to the Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Commission, Kara Dudek, Cynthia Hoyle, and Annie Adams will continue. Civil Service Commission, Tom Betts. Community Development Commission, Abdul Hakim Salam. Design Review Board, Jeffrey Poss. Free Library Board, Chris Scherer, Jane Williams, and Mark Netter. Historic Preservation Commission, Trent Shepard and David Seiler. Human Relations Commission, Francis Baker and Catalina Thomas. Market at the Square Advisory Commission, Shay Belhai and Kent Miles. The Mixed Office Residential Development Review Board, Jeffrey Poss. Plant Commission, Daniel Turner and Chris Storr. There's still a couple of more vacancies, appointments to be made to the Plan Commission and actually to several other commissions. We just haven't gotten them all finished yet. Continuing on the Sustainability Advisory Commission, Elizabeth Machuski, Andrew Stumpf, and Morgan Johnston. Tree Commission, Carol Osberger, and the Public Arts Commission, Catherine Harrell.
I move approval of these appointments.
I'll second.
Moved by Eric, seconded by Jared. Any comments? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. The ayes have it. And finally are the annual mayoral staff appointments for fiscal year 2017-2018. Couple of notes. The Human Relations Office is currently vacant. Alex Bautista took a job with the Illinois, I hope I'm getting this right, Department of Human Rights. And we are currently working out reorganization and staff assignments to handle that task, that job. The Chief of Staff, Michael Munson, will be retiring from that position in early August, so we will be appointing him through basically early August. City Administrator position is currently vacant, and we are initiating the process for an RFP for the search, to initiate the search, to identify the search firm for that. So that will get underway soon. And then I am very pleased to recommend appointments of Sylvia Morgan as Chief of Police and Bryant Seraphin as Deputy Chief of Police beginning July 1st, 2017. They've served as interim chief and deputy chief since April. Chief Morgan and Deputy Chief Bryant are highly respected leaders within the Urbana Police Department, the area law enforcement community in the city of Urbana. We place a high priority on community-based policing, a commitment to public service, and professionalism. They're hallmarks for this department. And with almost 50 years of combined experience serving Urbana, I believe these leaders will provide both the continuity and innovation that are essential to moving the department forward. Specifically, Chief Sylvia Morgan began work with the Urbana Police Department on June 23, 1993. She was promoted to sergeant in August 2000 and deputy chief in 2012. Chief Morgan has extensive background in patrol, street crimes, investigation, and administration. She served as adjunct instructor at the University of Illinois Police Training Institute and attended the Federal Bureau of Investigation's National Academy for Leadership Training. She also served as president of the Fraternal Order of Police Lodge 70 from 2006 to 2012. Deputy Chief Bryant Seraphin began work with the UPD as a patrol officer on October 6, 1994, worked as an investigator in the Criminal Investigations Division and was promoted to sergeant in 22, lieutenant in 27, served as lieutenant in the Patrol Division from 2015 to 2017. And his experience in investigation and patrol complements the skills of Chief Morgan. And I'm confident that this management team will provide exceptional leadership and dedication to public safety for the city of Urbana. Their resumes were included in your packet. As far as the other appointments, there are I guess no other things to comment on here. I do want to acknowledge and will be celebrating the contribution of Libby Tyler, who's retiring as Community Development Director from the City of Urbana after 17 years of service, and that will be on June 29th, I believe. So with with no further ado, those are the staff appointments recommended for fiscal year 2018.
So moved.
I'll second.
Moved by Aaron. I'll take someone from this side. Seconded by Dennis.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
Further discussion? Aaron?
Congratulations to the chief and new assistant chief. I speak a lot about diversity. It really is something that's important to me, and I see the role of women in our society as equally as important as I do around the issues of race and ethnicity. And so I'm very happy to see that we have a woman at the helm of our department. I support that. And I'm very excited about Brian being in position as assistant chief. His integrity and the way that people talk about you is, it goes, your reputation precedes you. So I'm confident that we will be in good hands. And then you guys can get in the hot seat now. So congratulations.
Yes, Chief Morgan will be the 31st police chief in the history of the city of Urbana and the first female police chief. So congratulations to you all.
Mayor, we do need a vote.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion carries. Thank you very much. No further business is before us, so this meeting stands adjourned.